Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, distinguished columnists and correspondents from Outlook Group as well. I'm very pleased to be with all of you this morning here in Bhubaneswar to talk to you about how we can reimagine and rethink the development, not just of Odisha, which of course I will talk about in some detail, but also our country. And the development model that India needs to follow, that our states need to follow, whether it is Odisha, Jharkhand, Assam, much of eastern India, has to be unique. What we need to do to develop our states to ensure that there are bountiful opportunities for our people has to be different from the model followed by most of the Western countries, China, for example, and to some extent, the development model also followed in Western India. We have to follow a different model. Now, typically when you speak to economists, ladies and gentlemen, and ask them about how regions or countries should develop, they'll talk to you about the farm to factory development model, the farm to factory development model. And in the farm to factory development model, typically economies move on two vectors, that is on two dimensions at the same time. The one dimension is industrialization. So you move people from farms, low productivity, low economic output agriculture, into industries, whether it is to textile factories, whether it is into leather, toys, computers. That's traditionally been the model that Eastern Asian countries have followed. So one vector is the vector of industrialization. The other vector is the vector of urbanization. And so when people talk about a development model, they say that for your country to develop, for your region to develop, and this is true for Odisha as well, as it is true for my state of Jharkhand, most economists will tell you, you have to industrialize and urbanize at the same time so you can get people out of low productivity agriculture into higher productivity jobs in factories in cities. That is the traditional thinking on how regions should develop, farm to factory. Now I happen to believe, and I've had a number of debates with some of the world's leading economists on this, which is that we in today's 21st century global economy cannot follow the farm to factory development model. And there are two or three important reasons for that. Number one, it's not possible for India to become a very large manufacturing country in the way that China is. So a lot of China's GDP is manufacturing. Of course, our manufacturing GDP has to increase. It has to go up to 20%, but it cannot become 40 or 50%, which is what the farm to factory development model would suggest. So we don't have enough manufacturing capacity that is necessary for the world to become a very large manufacturing country to follow the China model. So that's one issue, which is that industrialization going into factories is going to be difficult for us. The second issue is really related to urbanization. If we were to build just very, very large cities, if we were to take 65–70% of India and put them into cities, we would find it very difficult to absorb people, and our cities would not be able to handle the population pressure and all of the challenges that come with that kind of very high fast growth urbanization. So for us, getting that level of urbanization going is also very difficult. And then the third reason why it's not possible for us, I think, to really go after that kind of a factory driven model is because when it comes to our environmental carrying capacity, the amount of carbon dioxide we can put into the atmosphere, for example, the amount of pollutants we already have, which is polluting our country as it is right now, it's difficult for us to find the necessary ecological carrying capacity that will enable us to industrialize at that scale, which is what economists would like us to do. So therefore, the farm to factory development model for India, I think, is going to be quite challenging. I would not be an advocate of that. Instead, what I advocate, and to a great extent we have been following in our economic policies in the last 5 years under the Modi leadership, under the leadership of the Honorable Finance Minister Shri Arun Jaitley ji through our various budgets, is what I call a farm to frontier development model. Not a farm to factory development model, but a farm to frontier development model. And the idea of the frontier is that we have to take our people and rather than putting them into factories, put them into frontier industries, put them into industries that are high productivity industries, and most of which are service oriented industries. They are into mass services, not necessarily mass manufacturing. Now, if you were to ask me what are the examples of these mass services industries, I'll give you 3 or 4, and then I'll explain to you the policies that we've been following that are enabling us to really build out this mass services development model. So the mass services industries that have really grown very quickly in India over the last 10 or 15 years, but mostly in the last 5 years, include financial services. And here insurance, banking, asset management, these are the kinds of mass services where, you know, through financial inclusion, through micro pensions, through micro insurance, we have been able to take financial services, reduce them to a price point which becomes attractive not just for the top 50, 100 million people in India, but 500, 800 million people in India, where it becomes really mass market. That's where we have taken financial services. So that's one example of mass services. Another very good example of mass services is in telecom. Today, everybody in India virtually has a mobile phone. And not only do they have a mobile phone, we in India today are the largest consumer of mobile data in the world. Largest consumer of mobile data in the world. And again, that has happened because of mass adoption of telecom services. Earlier, when a cost per gigabyte was 1,000 rupees, the consumption of data was very low. But what has happened is that we brought down the cost of 1 gigabyte of data down to 10 or 20 rupees. It's become a mass consumption item, and telecom, rather than being just for the elite, has become a mass market phenomena, and telecom also is an example of mass services. Now, the third example of mass services is one from my own ministry, and that of course is aviation. As you know, the Honorable Prime Minister has said कि हवाई चप्पल वाले भी हवाई जहाज पे बैठेंगे. And so what we've been trying to do progressively is to bring connectivity, air connectivity, to all the far-flung corners of our country. In Odisha itself, we have of course started up Jharsuguda, but we are working in Rourkela, we are working on Jaipur, we are working on Utkala as well. So we are trying to open airports all around Odisha so that all the various regions of Odisha get connected. In the same way in Jharkhand, we had just one airport in Ranchi. We have just laid the foundation stone for another airport, which will be in fact not very far from the Odisha border, which is in Dalbungad. We are opening up the Bokaro airport. We are building an airport in Deoghar. We are building a bigger airport in Dumka, and we are about to start an airport in Hazaribagh also, which is my constituency. So different parts of this country are now getting connected in a way that was inconceivable earlier, and flying itself, which was very much considered to be something only for the elite. Flying was considered only for the elite. Ladies and gentlemen, flying also has become something that is mass services. I just walked around the Bhubaneswar airport right now, which is a beautiful airport, and I was told that with the increase in food and beverage outlets, with the increase in retail outlets, that airport alone has just hired about 300, 400 young people to work in those food and beverage and retail outlets. So that's how, when a sector reaches the mass market, it creates enormous employment opportunities. They're not employment opportunities in a factory, but they're employment opportunities in airports, they're employment opportunities in a call center or in a telecom network operation center. These are the kinds of employment opportunities that are created when we move towards the frontier, the technology frontier, the productivity frontier, and we move towards a mass services model. The benefit of the mass services model, ladies and gentlemen, also is that it is something that is a very non-polluting, low environmental footprint model. It doesn't take up as much in terms of environmental resources and as a manufacturing-led model would. So it is good from an environmental perspective as well, and also from a capital intensity point of view. If you look at services, the capital intensity of services tends to be lower than that of manufacturing, which means that we can get high capital productivity and we can really be able to use our savings in a very, very high productivity way to drive employment. So I argue that rather than following the standard farm to factory development model, we need to think about a farm to frontier model where the productivity and the output of our people go up and they work in globally competitive industries like in financial services, like in telecom, like in aviation, where we can continue to be able to compete with the world, continue to be able to do well. So that is the development model that I think works much better for India, much better for regions like Odisha, for Jharkhand and so on. And I'll come to some examples, as I said, about that. But I just want to highlight here that the policies that we followed in the last 5 years have really taken us forward when it comes to this farm to frontier model. And I'll highlight 3 or 4 things that I think really are landmark achievements for our government. And the first one I want to highlight is the fact that we have been able to achieve a level of macroeconomic stability that is essential for economic growth. So our economic growth, GDP, of course, is high. It's coming at about 7% a year. Inflation is at 3 to 4%. The fiscal deficit is at 3.4% right now. Obviously, current account deficit is between 2–2.5%. So a lot of the macroeconomic instability that we had when we came into power in 2014 has now been addressed, and we have a very, very stable macroeconomic framework, also because of the monetary policy that we put in place, inflation targeting, the MPC, all these things that we have done to stabilize the macroeconomic framework. And that macroeconomic framework, ladies and gentlemen, makes it possible to invest, to think about the future, and to really start to build out the new age, the industries of the future in a very aggressive way. And so when you look at what we have done as far as entrepreneurship and innovation is concerned, I think that is one of the landmark achievements of our government. When I was in the finance ministry, we enabled the tax pass-through of alternative investment funds, AIFs. Prior to that, there was no tax pass-through of pooled investment vehicles that were investing in private equities or that were not investing in public markets. So a mutual fund, there was a tax pass-through that you were taxed only in the hands of the ultimate beneficiary, not in the investment vehicle. But with us doing this for AIFs as well, we enabled domestic venture capital and domestic private equity to happen. With domestic venture capital and domestic private equity now really taking off, with us creating the India Aspiration Fund as a fund of funds, the amount of venture capital and private equity going into the Indian economy, ladies and gentlemen, has tripled in the last 5 years. If you compare 2009 to 2014 to 2014 to 2019, this 5-year period, there's been 3 times more private equity and venture capital going into the Indian economy because of the tax changes, because of the kind of incentives that we've put in place for Startup India, for AIFs and so on. This is what is required to drive the industries of the future. We have to get entrepreneurship, we have to get venture capital, we have to get innovation to get going. And even as far as innovation is concerned, through the Atal Innovation Mission and the institutions of eminence, which is further up the innovation value chain, we are doing a tremendous number of things to really unlock the startup ecosystem in India. India now is the country with the 3rd most startups in the world. The 3rd most startups in the world. That's what we're doing to prepare for the future. So macroeconomic stability, really pushing entrepreneurship and innovation. The 3rd very important thing that we've achieved, and in some ways maybe the most historic, and here I always like to refer to what Franklin Delano Roosevelt did in the 1930s in the United States. As you might remember, in the 1930s, the United States went through a very serious depression. 25% of America was unemployed. And Franklin Delano Roosevelt started the Public Works program, but he also started Social Security to ensure that people got an old age pension and to ensure that they were covered as far as medical assistance was concerned, medical insurance was concerned. Social Security, ladies and gentlemen, was so popular in the United States that FDR won 3 successive presidential elections. And in fact, because of that, they had to pass a constitutional amendment, and they said that you can only be a 2-term, you can only have 2 terms as a US president, you can't have a 3rd term. I suspect what is going to happen after everything we've done for Social Security is that our government too is going to keep on winning consecutive elections. Because what we've done for Social Security in this country is absolutely historic. Whether it is Ayushman Bharat, whether it is Jan Dhan, whether it is the Kisan Yojana that we've given as virtually like a universal basic income of 6,000 rupees going to each farmer, whether it is the Jeevan Jyoti Bima Yojana, Jeevan Suraksha Bima Yojana, where we've created insurance packages at a very low cost, or the pension program that we've now introduced, we have created a full package of social security measures to support the population. And if we want to get to people to high productivity industries, innovative industries, entrepreneurial industries, there will be more churn, there will be more ups and downs, and so we have to protect people, we have to provide them social security, and we have done that as well. So social security, of course, is very important. Macroeconomic stability, entrepreneurship and innovation, social security. 3 very important things that we've done. The 4th very important thing that we've done, ladies and gentlemen, which is really driving our economy forward, is a revolution in connectivity. If you look at what we have done in roads and highways, if you look at what we've done in railways, if you look at what we've done with ports, and if you look at what we've done in aviation, collectively over the last 5 years, we have embarked on a connectivity revolution. The ability to move things around in India, whether it's from a logistics goods perspective or from a people's perspective, is extraordinary. And I will give you some facts on aviation because obviously that's my ministry and I know all the details there intimately well. But in 5 years, ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to aviation, we have doubled passenger traffic. Today, we have about 250 million trips a year of people traveling around in our aviation system. That's twice what it was in 2014. And in addition to that, we have also improved the quality of the passenger experience. Not only have we doubled traffic, and you will of course have some complaints, well, my flight was delayed and my luggage got lost. Everybody has that. But when you look at it in aggregate statistically, you'll find all of our quality scores, all of our satisfaction scores have gone up. How many of you still remember baggage tags? Remember we used to have baggage tags? Gone. Remember all the forms that we had to fill up? Gone. We have improved the passenger experience dramatically as far as aviation is concerned. And as far as the number of airports are concerned, ladies and gentlemen, when we came to power in 2014, there were 75 airports in India that had commercially scheduled services. Now we have 104. 104. So we have dramatically expanded the number of airports. There used to be an airport a year that was added to the aviation network. We have been adding 5 or 10 airports a year to our aviation network, and of course the game changer has been Udaan, that has opened up all these airports by a very well designed government scheme that has unleashed market forces and really led to airlines bidding for new airports and really getting these airports started. So aviation is an example of how there has been this incredible revolution in connectivity. And then I'll finally come to what we have done through Make in India and our efforts to get more manufacturing into India. Here also there are any number of success stories. If you look at the manufacturing of smartphones and phones in general, there was a time when we were importing virtually all our phones into India, all. Today, 60% or more of phones are actually being manufactured in India. And when we do that, we bring an entire ecosystem of electronics manufacturing into India as well, and that is exactly what is happening. Again, if you look at consumer durables, the number of TV sets, the number of washing machines, all of these consumer durables, much more manufacturing has come into India. You look at automotive, we are a leader in small car manufacturing when it comes to the automotive industry. There's going to be a huge explosion in electric vehicles, both two-wheelers and four-wheelers. That's also about to happen. So through Make in India, ladies and gentlemen, that also has been a policy that we have pushed hard and vigorously and is now showing very, very good results. So the development model that I think we need to follow is farm to frontier. We have to take industries of the future, mass services industries, manufacturing industries where we have a global competitive advantage and really focus on that. The development model we should not think about following is where we say, all right, we'll build even more low quality textile factories, or we'll build even more assembly manufacturing facilities and so on. I don't think that's the model that we need to follow. I don't think that's a future-proof model for us. Now, with that framework in mind, a farm to frontier framework in mind, let's talk about what we can do when it comes to reimagining Odisha's economic development. What is it that Odisha can do to be able to also think farm to frontier? Not just farm to factory, but farm to frontier. Now, I would suggest for Odisha, there are 3 industries that are going to be really industries that are services oriented, which really are based on Odisha's own natural competitive advantages, and where you can truly be not just a leader in India, but a global leader as well. So the first one that I would like to highlight is tourism. Every time I come to Odisha, I'm struck by how beautiful this state is. How many wonderful attractions you have, whether it is in the forests, whether it is with the temples, whether it is with the beaches. The tourism potential of Odisha is remarkable. You have pristine landscapes, you have incredible wildlife, and there's so much that can be done to really tap tourism. Tourism accounts for something like 10% of the global GDP. And people increasingly are moving towards an experience economy where they treasure and really want high quality experiences. So tourism, which is again a services driven industry, an industry which can employ lots and lots of people, is going to be something that I think is really going to be a real game changer for Odisha. I know you all are embarking on many efforts in that direction, but I think a lot more can be done there. And of course, the airports that we are building for Odisha, Jharsuguda, Jaipur, Rourkela, Utkela, and so on, I think can help a lot in that. And I'll give you one just very small example on that, and then I'll move to the second industry. I myself started the airport in Vijayanagar, which is just a few kilometers from Hampi. Hampi is one of the world's great heritage sites. Incredible. But there was no airport in Hampi, and getting to Hampi was always very difficult. But with the airport that Hampi has now, it has become possible from Bangalore and Hyderabad to get to Vijayanagar to Hampi very easily. And that has led people to really discover that World Heritage Site. And in fact, the New York Times put Hampi as the second most important tourism site that people need to visit. Second best site to go to. And they said the reason for that, the game changer, is in fact the airport. So in the same way, if we can find the right places to put airports, the right places to get connectivity improved, I think that can be very, very important for the development of tourism in Odisha. So that's, I think, a very important industry for Odisha to think about. The second very important industry for Odisha, and I know in Bhubaneswar you've started work on this, is in IT services. And this is a problem that we have in Jharkhand as well, and I'm sure in Odisha also, which is of outward migration. People are leaving Jharkhand, they're leaving Odisha, I'm sure, to go to Bangalore, to go to Gurgaon and work in IT services and BPOs and other such knowledge-oriented industries. But because we have very young populations, we have hardworking people, if we create the right infrastructure, the right connectivity, the right campuses for IT services, I think that is something that is going to grow and develop very quickly. In Bangalore today, attrition rates are high, getting people is difficult, People are looking to build large campuses, and if they can find the right infrastructure, the right locations, and we can give them land, we can give them infrastructure, we can give them connectivity, I think we can attract a lot of IT services towards our various states. We are working on that in Jharkhand. I'm sure you're thinking about it on Odisha, but that is definitely one area where we can do a much better job. The states in the west and in the south have done a remarkable job there, but I think because of our young populations, we can do much more. Now I come to the third industry, which is also mass services, which is also, I think, very, very important, and that is garments. I'm not saying textiles. I'm saying garments. And if you study the policy that we've implemented in Jharkhand for the garment industry, you'll find that we have been able to attract a large number of companies to come to Jharkhand. Arvind is in Jharkhand, Orient Craft is in Jharkhand. We have several other garment manufacturing companies that are looking very, very carefully at Jharkhand and are looking to expand dramatically there. And the reason they are coming is, A, because we have provided them land and we've provided them power and water and all of these facilities in a very convenient package, single window clearance. And that, of course, is important. But the most important thing for them is actually young people to work in these garment factories. And these garment factories today, ladies and gentlemen, are not the old style sweatshop factories. They're not, because they're doing very small lots. They're using a lot of automated stitching, and they're using a lot of new customized and very high-end designs. There's a lot of very high quality skills required to be able to do that kind of garment manufacturing. And that, I think, is a fabulous industry for the future. We have people who are very, very good with their hands. They are remarkably capable craftsmen, and we've had a long tradition in our states of that kind of artisanship, of that kind of craftsmanship, whether it's embroidery, whether it's textiles, and so on. So there's a natural fit for us when it comes to garments. So I think the garment industry is another industry which is very likely to grow very, very fast if we provide them the right facilities and the right policies. And with a lot of garment manufacturing coming out of China right now, there is a tremendous groundswell of interest in India right now to see whether we can become a bigger garment manufacturer for the world. So I think that's a third industry where we've been very successful in Jharkhand, seen enormous growth right next to my constituency. In fact, in Hazaribagh, in Ormanjhi, in Ranchi, there are 3 major garment factories coming up. Each one of those factories is going to employ about 10,000 young people with good jobs, 20 to 25,000 rupees a month type jobs. So I think that's a great job creator. It's a great driver towards being able to provide prosperity and fast growth for our states. So I think as far as Odisha is concerned, tourism, IT services, and garment manufacturing, which of course, as I said, is quite high-end today because of the kind of stitching and the kind of customized designs you have to do. I think each of these 3 industries is a cutting-edge industry. It's going to take you to the frontier. It's a low environmental footprint industry. All 3 of them create very large numbers of jobs, and I think those are the ones that we, particularly in Eastern India, should be thinking about. I'll just add a 4th one, because I know that in Odisha you have been doing some of this with some success. I think that also is an area where we can have quite a bit of success, and that's in agri-processing. There's a company in Odisha that I think has done extremely well called Milk Mantra. Milk Mantra, I'm sure you've seen their products in Bhubaneswar and so on, but Milk Mantra is putting together a private sector Amul, where they are creating a very successful dairy processing plant coupled to some cooperatives, and that's enabling them to be able to come out with a lot of unique and interesting products as well, whether it's in curds, whether it is in milk products, cheese, ice cream. Many of these are value-added products and can do extremely well. So agri-processing can also be a very good industry to look at if you all are considering that. So I'll conclude here. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll conclude here by once again emphasizing that if we focus on connectivity, if we focus on entrepreneurship, we focus on a development model that is a farm to frontier, high productivity, technology driven, globally competitive approach, then we can really take our states, make our states future ready, make our states very attractive to the industries of the future, and that in fact is the development model that we should think of following, as opposed to trying to follow the development models of the past, which I don't think that can work. So we really have to stop thinking farm to factory and start thinking farm to frontier. That in fact is the development model we should follow. Thank you very, very much. I'm happy to take a few questions.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, for the pertinent insights, and I think the audience members are ready for questions. We will get your microphone, sir, very, very shortly. I have to say, sir, you've given us the much needed motivation and inspiration so that we are emboldened enough to prepare for the future. Sir, please introduce yourself and ask your question. Please identify yourself.
Sir, myself is Mayadhar Naik, a member of an intellectual cell. For Odisha, nicely you have described. For Odisha, the employment creation is agriculture. In irrigation, nothing has been done in Odisha. So there is no employment. Second, we are having raw materials like iron, many other things. Here, we can have many industries. China is having industries. Japan is having industries. Odisha, there is no industry. We can create massive employment opportunities in Odisha if we will exploit the raw materials here. Only these 2 points, nothing else.
Yeah. No, I didn't say that we should not do manufacturing. Of course we have to do manufacturing, and of course we have to be able to take advantage of the natural resources we have. Of course in Jharkhand also we are very rich in coal and iron ore and so on. But my view on that is that they are not as labor intensive, they are not as good in terms of creating jobs as the services industries are. So if you look at manufacturing today, they have become very, very capital intensive, very automated if you want to be globally competitive. And as a result of that, their job creation potential is not as much as it is when we do mass services. So tourism, for example, is extraordinary when it comes to job creation. So when we want to see how we can provide the most number of jobs to our young populations, I think our focus should be more on the mass services side than on the mass manufacturing side. There is a role for mass manufacturing, but we also have to take into account the displacement on the ground when you start to mine in a very large way. Hazaribagh today, Hazaribagh and Ramgarh, where I come from, ladies and gentlemen, is now virtually the coal center of India. We are producing more coal now than Dhanbad is. And at the same time, while that's creating a lot of prosperity and it's leading to significant coal output, from a pollution and an environmental perspective, it is also quite damaging. So we have to balance out what the impact to the environment is from some of the mining and the natural resources. That has to be balanced out. Ultimately, in the future, we want to go towards those industries that create more jobs and have a smaller environmental footprint than mining and industries. They have a role to play, but as I said, we've got to move away from the farm to factory model and think more about the farm to frontier model, because ultimately that for the future is going to be more sustainable and it's going to create more jobs.
Sir, my name is Ellen Bhola. I'm from the same BJP intellectual cell. Sir, one thing you said that the development model for India and for Odisha, but can we, whenever you go for budgeting or planning, can we start from the end itself? Like, you know, we're getting a lot of coverage that the economic size will be 5 trillion, 10 trillion. But when you go for the budgeting part, why don't you take the sector and start from the end? Which size, what kind of size exactly that is running in the head of the policymakers? That is one thing. Second, for Odisha, why you cannot make Khordha Balangir as an economic corridor?
I'm sorry, on the second question.
The second question, there is a Khordha Balangir railroad is on the, it is in the pipeline. It is at the halfway, it is complete, or 30% is complete already from Balangir side and from Khordha road side. But what I say, why government or a policymaker cannot think to make it, convert it as an economic
It's very clear that for the development of a state, and we are seeing this in Jharkhand right now, you need to have a double engine driving the state's development. And we are seeing this in Jharkhand. Jharkhand's GDP growth is the second highest in the country, is because we have a government that is in Delhi and we have a government in Ranchi that is working together. And when that happens, the development of the state really picks up pace and moves very quickly. And whether it is land, whether it is forest clearance, whether it is the implementation of schemes, all of these factors are far more efficient and much better when there is strong collaboration between the center and the state.
Sir, namaskar. I am from intellectual cell of BJP. So my question is, I agree with your views that that these three ways we can develop Odisha, but another fourth, I think what that is, we have a large area for coastal land. That means sea products and marine products we can export, and in this way we can also put some good income to our GDP or Odisha development, in case if you add some agriculture, and we have a lot of rivers also that we can also develop. In this way, I think we can develop Odisha.
You're absolutely right. And I said at the end, I said there's a fourth area that is absolutely worth considering, which is agri services of various kinds. And I gave the example of Milk Mantra and what's possible in dairying industries. Similarly, of course, in fisheries, and as you know, in the latest budget, we have said that, you know, fishermen can also get the Kisan credit card. We are going to be extending a number of advantages for fishing and for marine products as well. So certainly for Odisha, that also has remarkable potential. And I think that is certainly something to examine as well. I personally don't know as much about it as I do about the other three industries. So my attention was drawn more towards those three. But I think even in marine and fisheries, I think Odisha has tremendous potential as well.
So with that, sir, will have to be the last question then.
This is the last question, I
and
think
pointed
so.
question.
Maybe we should take it from that side.
From the lady.
Because
maybe
we've taken a lot
maybe
of
we should give
from
a
that
turn
side.
to the ladies. One of the
Yes,
ladies, please take the mic.
One
Yes,
of the
ma'am.
ladies, please.
Dressed in blue.
So I am Bhuvnandini from Centurion University of Technology and Management. So I do agree with your farm to frontier technology model, but what I feel is that we cannot ignore agriculture sector. If you see that till now Indian agriculture is contributing around 16%. So instead of shifting people from agriculture to technology driven sector, can't we make our agriculture sector technology driven? Because you will see the even 40% of our Indian farmers are using any kind of technology, modern technology. So can't we make our agriculture sector technology driven so that the contribution of agriculture will increase?
No, of course, you're absolutely right. I agree with you fully. And maybe it's just a question of semantics, because when I talk about frontier industries, I include in it agro-processing. So if we have to increase output, if we have to increase the productivity of our farmers, we have to really modernize the technologies that they use. So, for example, let's take drip irrigation. By implementing modern high quality drip irrigation, we can increase yields dramatically. By giving them cold storage facilities, cold chain facilities, we can reduce spoilage, we can reduce wastage. By adding modern processing, food processing plants, we can increase their value add. So these agro-processing industries, these agri-industries are very much part of mass services. They are very much part of how we can improve the productivity of agriculture, and that's absolutely what we need to do if we want to grow the income of our farmers. And if you look at what our government is doing in terms of really trying to double and triple farmer incomes, a lot of that is coming from increasing the productivity and the type of products that our farmers can produce, not just traditional wheat and rice, but also vegetables, also milk, also eggs, You know, all of these other additional products, fisheries I just spoke about earlier, all of these different ways in which farmers can add more different types of things that they can produce and then have that processed and make it available to people in very convenient packages so that they can use them in cities as well. So all these things have to be thought about when we want to improve the productivity of our agriculture. I would call all of those as agri-services, agri-processing, that becomes an industry in and of itself. All right?
Honorable Minister, I
So
have...
with that, sir, I'm extremely sorry in the interest of time. In the interest of
I have
time,
a
sir,
concrete
sir,
proposal. Okay. I have a concrete proposal on tourism. You have taste on tourism. Good mornings to everybody. Namaskar. In our midst here, there is former Chief Secretary and a renowned colleague of mine also. I am a renowned bureaucrat. I was Collector Puri because
So if,
Sir,
if it's a comment rather than a question, perhaps you can do it at some later stage. Unless you want me to respond. If you don't, then that's fine.
One thing, whether this proposal is feasible or not, that's matter. I gave a proposal to government while I was Collector Puri that there should be a rail link from Rambagh to Digha. Rail link from Rambagh to Digha, connecting all the tourist spots like Bhubaneswar, Konark, and Paradip, etc., up to. So it will fetch a lot of money, and this will be run on a PPP model. That's the proposal I gave. I am putting for this proposal before the Honorable Minister, whether this proposal is feasible or not. If this could be feasible, then a lot of money, lot of earnings from the tourism can be possible.
Thank you for your comment. I'll pass that on to the Railway Minister.
Yes, absolutely. A big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for the Honorable Minister. Thank you very much, sir, once again.